You're watching Onward with Onrie. I'm your host, Kompan, and this week we're going to be talking about honesty. Now, when it comes to putting your comic book out there, it is extremely important for the future of your series that you are completely honest with yourself before and after you release your book. But let's say you're at the beginning stages of getting your comic out there, right? And you've decided what your project is, you've written a script, you've hired an artist. What next? Well, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to look at your script and determine whether or not the story you're telling is actually something that's going to sell. And I know a lot of us don't want to hear this. A lot of people just feel like, hey, if I just believe in myself and I put out my comic book, there will be an audience. Yes, that's true. But if you really want to take it to the top, if you really want to do this professionally and have a career doing it, you have to look at what sells. And you have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing something that's going to sell? And most importantly, you have to look at the artwork that you are using and ask yourself, is this serving the story I'm trying to tell, and is it going to help sell more books? Art is the essential component of comic books, right? And I'll tell you something I did. Before releasing Eastern Shen, I used to go to comic shops all the time, and I would look at the comics that were on the stands, and I would think to myself, is my comic meeting the standards of what is out there today? And the truth is that you have to have a built-in instinct for this stuff. And if you're not going to be honest with yourself about it, then you won't be able to develop this skill. You have to look beyond the idea of whether or not your idea is good or crap. And it doesn't matter at this point. Is this going to sell? And if it isn't, that doesn't mean you abandon the project. It means that you refocus and find what is going to make it work. Which brings me to my second point. You have to learn from your mistakes. Do not be stubborn and repeat them. It will not serve you in any way. I've seen so many situations occur where artists or writers or just any creator will go down a certain path, and you'll suggest that they change one minor thing which could potentially improve the way they conduct business and improve the way they work and everything, and they won't do it. They won't change it because they're so set on their ways. And doing that means that you're prone to repeating the same things again and again, and you're not going to learn from it, right? And this is also something that applies to you in the sense that how you interact with other people is how they're going to treat you. So if you're not honest and forthcoming with the people that work with you, they're not going to be honest with you either. So it goes both ways. If you're going to come into a project and you're not going to put in the extra effort to make sure that it's successful, why would anybody else do that for you? Why would you expect the artist to do this? They're only as invested in the project as you are. And the more passion you show and the more energy you put into everything, the more they're going to want to naturally follow you. There's a reason why comics that are successful, it's not just one person. It's a team of people coming together. And there's leadership, and there's people who are executors, and there's people who know how to market and reach the book. It's an entire production. And it's interesting because, you have to be honest with yourself in order to build a good team, and you have to be honest with the people that are working for you. You have to see, is this someone that I can come to and be like, look, the page you just turned in, it isn't going to cut it. You need to redraw this, and, no artist wants to go back. Nobody on the face of the planet wants to redo something that they've already completed. In fact, this is the second time I'm actually recording this episode, because while I was recording it before, someone called me in the middle of me recording, and it totally fucked everything up, and so now I have to re-record everything again from scratch. Nobody wants to redo their work again, and I get that. But at the end of the day, when you release your book and you put it out there and people are buying it, are they going to give a shit that your artist didn't want to redo a page? Does it change the fact that they just spent $3 to $5, maybe $25, maybe $75 with you on your products? That's not going to matter to them. So you have to be completely honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with the people that you're working with. And if they're not doing what's expected of them, you're the one who has to bear the responsibility for that, because you're the one who's not only paying them, the buck stops with you. Remember that. you're also the one who's going out there and, selling your product. And it doesn't matter if you do it like I do at conventions or if you go to, comic shops and do it that way. The same rules apply. And you can't depend on one thing either. Like I've seen a lot of projects where, there'll be a big name on the title, and the book won't sell because the art sucks. But at the same time, it's not just the name that's always selling something. It's also the publisher, and it's the people behind it. It's the people who are actually the people who are selling it need to have just as much of a strong understanding of the product as the people who have actually worked on it. That's what really helps any product sell, to be honest with you. If the person selling it is not familiar with the product and passionate about it, they're not going to be able to convey that to the customer. And if the customer doesn't feel passion in the product, they're not gonna go for it. And you can't just depend on one thing either, like I was saying. Like if I went to a convention and I just depended on my banner posters to do all the selling for me, I'd be dead in the water. Not because the artwork on it isn't brilliant, which it is, but I just know how people's attention spans are. When they go to a convention, their eyes are everywhere. And you know what? The same thing applies at a comic shop. If you're at a comic book shop, your eyes are going everywhere because there's all these comic book covers, there's all this new stuff coming out. You have to get people's attention, and that is not an easy thing to do. You have to get them to pick your book up off of a store rack or look at your book and walk over to it. And it's not going to happen if you don't have a quality product. The quality product, that's the one that's going to get out there and get people excited. And like I was saying, this won't just sell by itself because people's attention span is everywhere. So I have to get out there. I have to be that sales force to draw people in. And the same thing occurs when you're distributing books, through Diamond at retail shops. Chances are, if you're an independent creator like myself, you're not going to be given the best real estate at a shop. Unless the retailer knows you and is really a big fan of your work. Your work is going to end up in a different position that most people may not see. So you have to get out there and really push it. That's something that I had to do back in the day. When I was first getting started, I had to go, I was working a full-time job, and I had just distributed 10 copies of issue 1 of Yisun Shin at Graham Cracker Comics. And, I left it there for a week hoping that people would see it. And it was put in the back of the shop. No one picked it up. And I realized that the reason why they weren't picking it up is because they weren't seeing it. So every Wednesday at about 10 o'clock, I would quietly sneak out of work. I'd rush down the street to Graham Crackers because I worked right on the same block as where the shop was. And I'd hang out there for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And I would pitch my book, and that gave me experience, but at least I got my book into people's hands. Now, you can't always do that, and especially now, I can't be doing that now. I can't go to a comic shop every week and put my book in other people's hands, while, they're there to pick up their other stuff, unless I have some kind of special arrangement with the retailer. But you can still go online and utilize social media in order to get people to, pick up your book and stuff like that. Or if you have a salesperson who's really good, look into that. But if they're not invested with you and you're just paying them money blindly, you can only expect such limited results. You're not going to see anything really grow. You have to surround yourself with people that you can be brutally honest with. And that's why I'm very selective of the people that I choose to work with, because, I can't be honest with everybody. There are a lot of nice guys out there, a lot of artists that I'm friends with. And I'm not going to say that they're not good enough to work with me. I don't feel like that. But with the projects that I'm working on, I'm looking for something very specific. And if your style is not what I'm looking for, well, I don't want to make you feel bad, because I don't think you're a bad artist. I think there are a lot of really wonderful artists. I know some very talented people. But, to work with me on a particular project, I have to know that I can trust you to handle the responsibility that comes with it, because, this is everything for me. If I release a book that isn't up to, my standards, if I don't get it out there on time and to the quality of standards that I set for myself, I'm going to lose readers. And that to me isn't worth it. So this is why it's very important to be honest, guys. Be honest with yourself, look at everything, really decide whether or not you want to do this for real. Because if you do want to do it for real, you need to follow what's being done right. And you need to find your own way to do it even better. All right? I'll see you guys next week with a brand new episode. Until then, onward to victory.